Perhaps equally as important as picking the March Madness winner for your bracket is knowing which teams to avoid in your bracket in the tournament. In this video, we're going to talk about key tenets to spotting a March Madness upset and the attributes that more often than not are underlying in each of these upsets in the tournament. So let's go through some of the spots where you see upsets happen. A lot of the times, what we're seeing here is mid-majors with the high seed that are not named Gonzaga, the high seed being a top five seed, get bounced within the first weekend. 11 seeds have been hot lately. Got to watch out for them, especially when we see who gets decided on Selection Sunday. Teams that have perhaps a low seed, but that doesn't really correlate to their high Ken Palm ranking. Those teams are primed for upsets. And then teams with slow tempos have been really primed for upsets, especially lately in March Madness. We'll get to that one last. Before we get all there, subscribe to the channel. We're having a ton of great March Madness content between a lot of stats that I put together and Sliwa's immense college basketball knowledge. I found it hard to think there's a channel with much more information out there that you could use to build a perfect bracket, to make some money this tournament, and to win your bracket in your league. So let's get into it. So where I talked about mid-major teams with the top five seed. The stat here is pretty compelling. 12 of the last 15 mid-majors that held the top five seed were bounced by the first weekend. Didn't even make it to the Sweet 16, despite being a top five seed. I think that really goes to show that you shouldn't put too much faith, despite how good they've looked in the regular season in these mid-major teams. I know this stat is saying excluding Gonzaga, but from talking to you, it sounds like you think even this year Gonzaga is primed for an upset.
Oh yeah, yeah. This year, I feel like this has got to be the worst Gonzaga's been like in the last decade, or really since started watching basketball super closely. But yeah, this is the least skilled Gonzaga team I've seen in a while. It's between transfers, some freshmen that haven't exactly been stars right away. I'm thinking of Stromer, but yeah, I think Gonzaga is a big team to avoid this year. They started off the season really bad, faded them in the early non-conference. It made a lot of money off of it, and then they've kind of improved their ratings as the season's gone along. Some of that is obviously some improvement, but they have been getting some wins against the WW or the WCC conference. So
Mhm.
I'm not sold at all on Gonzaga. St. Mary's is another one. They're pretty much even in ranking, both in the WCC conference, playing for the championship tonight. But yeah, I would avoid both of them heading into March, and
What do you
as
think
well
about San
as
Diego State there falling in
I
on
would even
WC?
avoid San Diego State. They're a really good defensive team, so they kind of have the same bread and butter from last year, but uh, they even had a couple guys transfer out. Main one I'm thinking, Kashad Johnson transferred from San Diego State to Arizona. He's been a beast for them at the power forward spot. So yeah, I don't think they're any better than they were last year. I do think they got very lucky making it as far as they did. The defense is still great, but to just be able to pull out those wins. They beat FAU on a buzzer beater.
Yep.
uh,
Yep.
I think my big thing here is, I'm not super sold on any mid majors. I loved FAU last year. They have all the same guys back, so I think I would still maybe go with FAU, to be honest. Just kind of playing some of that history from last year. They haven't had as dominant of a season, but they got all those same guys back. They made the Final Four. I think that's a really good team that could be a sleeper. But yeah, usually I'm looking for a team like that who last year FAU was, I think, undefeated or maybe lost one game. So I just trusted them. I knew they knew how to win games. Uh, Whereas I feel like the big trend this year is um the Mountain West Conference has been super competitive, but none
Mhm.
of these teams have really pulled in front.
Yeah. Good
Like
point.
Utah State, San Diego State, Colorado State, Boise State, like they're all really
Nevada, New
good. They could all
Mexico.
exactly. I know New Mexico is another one of them that I thought New Mexico would maybe run away with this conference at some point, but none of them have. And they are good teams, but yeah, if they can't pull together a few wins and run away with the conference against each other, I don't know how they're going to do it against the likes of Purdue,
Yeah.
Alabama, Creighton, teams like that. So I think, yeah, I mean the MWC was tough this year, but I'm not sold on any of them making a big run because they haven't been able to do it in their own conference. And now they're going to be playing even tougher competition moving forward. So yeah, I do think this is a really good stat and a good point. And my one that I would kind of put some faith in just off of history is I think you could get some value on FAU.
Yeah, good to know. And I think, we just mentioned, I think of all those teams, San Diego State, especially just being in the finals last year, I think it'd be a pretty big favorite to move on, people to move on to their bracket, especially past the first weekend. But, they're primed for an upset in this spot. And one of the other rules, slow tempo, they are a very slow tempo team. So we only have 4 rules in this whole video, and we'll get to it later, but they qualify for 2 of the upset spots, being in a mid-major and also playing with really slow tempo here. Going on to the next point, Sliwa, 11 seeds have been so hot lately. Not only are they, winning at a formidable rate, they're winning more than half the time against the 6 seed. At least 2 11 seeds have won. At least 2 of them have won in 6 of the last 7 years. So it's not just like you're getting one team out of nowhere, one 11 seed making a run. More often than not, the 11 seeds are beating the 6 seeds, and especially of late. So we don't know who the 11 seeds are yet, but I think, watching this video, take heed of this point here. It's not just a random trend. It's been going on for at least the last 7 years and not longer. But 11 seeds have some real staying power in the tournament, especially over those 6 seeds that even if you think they're hot and can make a run, 11 seed could put an end to that right in the first round. So beware for that as you're watching on Selection Sunday and you're seeing who some of these 11 seeds are. Mathematically speaking, 2 of those 11 seeds are going to win in that first round. So keep an eye on which 11 seeds you'd like to make a run.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, yeah, I kind of have to wait for the seedings to come out. I think a team that might fall into that category too, though, that I would like to be a winner as an 11 seed is Northwestern. That's a
Mhm.
team that just everybody, for the most part, that I know, just like, oh, Northwestern sucks, but they're
Louis, baby.
21 and 10. They've led by a great guard. They've beaten Purdue this year. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you could definitely find some value there. I'm really curious to also see where South Carolina ends up. They've been really good this year at 25 and 6. Honestly, I forget their head coach's name, but he should be head coach of the year because they weren't supposed to be even competitive this season. Um, but I think they're going to probably get screwed on the seeding, and they'll probably be the team that a lot of people might think that's better than them.
Yeah. That South Carolina head coach, he is like, if I'm thinking of the right guy, he kind of looks like more of like a football. If he's still the head coach, he looks more of like a football head coach than he does basketball. I love this guy so much. If it's the same dude,
I
um,
don't. I
it might.
think it's a new guy. It's not Frank Martin. Frank
That's who
Martin's
I was thinking.
gone.
I love Frank Martin.
Yeah.
It's Lamar
Yeah. No.
Harris now.
Yeah. No. But I mean, yeah, he's done an insane job at
Yeah,
South
good for
Carolina,
him.
and I mean, I've made some. I think I'm 50-50 on him, but they win
I know
games
you
that
like
I don't really
Lamar.
expect them to.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the name of the game in March. You got to win games you're not expected to win.
Yeah. Oh, and another one that I'll throw out there, just because traditionally you're not probably gonna pick this team, but Washington State really good. I've been kind of down on the Pac-12, haven't watched a lot, but outside of Arizona, who was a real shot to win the whole thing, I think Washington State's probably the only other team from that conference that can make some noise in
Even
this
make a
bracket.
little bit of a run there. This one is one of my favorite stats just because it's got one of my favorite sources in Ken Palm data. But within like the last 10 years, there have been 15 teams that have ranked in the top 35 of Ken Palm, but they've received a seed of number 11 or worse. And, it kind of plays hand in hand with the last stat where these 11 seeds are winning games in the first and second round. But these teams that are ranked in the top 35, but not given the respect by the selection committee, these teams are batting over 50%, over 60% in the first round alone. That's pretty impressive for we're talking about 11, 12, 13 seeds here, Sliwa. So definitely use KenPom rankings to help pick these upsets, especially when you're looking at that. I think that 13 to 11 range is the prime lens there. You're not going to get a ton of upsets from the 14, 15, and certainly not the 16 seed, but that 13, 12, 11, that's where a lot of Sweet 16 runs that can help you really make some noise in your bracket. That's where they happen. And so keep an eye for that. It doesn't happen often, doesn't necessarily happen every year, but if it does, certainly give some credence to those teams that their selection committee seeds aren't lining up with what their Ken Palm ranking is.
Right. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
the Ken
think
Palm
like
ranking
a
too.
Wisconsin
Yeah,
or Michigan State could fall into there.
that's
Like
what I
those
was
Big Ten
trying to
teams
get.
who are a little bit over 500, but
They sneak
still
into
rated
11.
really high.
Mm-hmm.
I mean Villanova too, if they even make the tournament. It's 17 and 14 now, but they're rated 28th in Ken Palm, which is crazy. Being 3 games above 500.
Yeah, what? Like just looking at some mid-major teams too, like New Mexico, Nevada, those guys can qualify there too. Like FAU, you said they're teetering on that top 35. Same with Boise State, same with Colorado State that you mentioned. So there are some teams there that, mid-majors probably not going to get a top 10 seed. And might fall in this category where you pick them to make an upset and separate yourself from some other people that, aren't as keen on these rankings as you might be.
Yeah, no, I like it.
And the last one, as I mentioned, is slow tempo here. Slow tempo can be a killer for teams. It could play in your favor depending on where the game's going. But if there is a team with a glaring weakness, either a really poor offense or a really poor defense, and they have a slow tempo, then they really struggle in the tournament. The strict fact being that slow tempo is just easily means there's less opportunity to be better. You're giving yourself less possessions per game, and therefore giving yourself less opportunities to separate yourself from the weaker opponent. So if you have a poor defense and a slow tempo and another team gets out ahead of you early, you're not giving yourself a ton of possessions to make up for that. A team like Illinois or Alabama, Kentucky, they all have terrible defenses, but what's going to save them is they're going to play fast. They're going to put up a ton of shots and they're going to play to their strength and offense while moving the ball quickly and giving their offense, their strength, plenty of opportunities to score. If you have a poor defense and a slow tempo, you're not going to give your offense that same opportunity to come back in that game if you're down. Pretty simple, I think. So
Yeah.
anything you want to add before I actually get to the data here to identify some of these teams with poor offense slash defense and a slow tempo?
No, yeah, I think anecdotally, I mean, Virginia, they were the first number 1 seed to lose to a 16 seed, and
Incredibly slow tempo.
they play the slowest kind of basketball you can really. So yeah, exactly. You get down early, and then you have to change your play style. It's really tough to do.
Or like if your one strength being offense or defense, if they're not on that game, more so it's offense that isn't on. If that offense isn't gelling that day and the shots aren't falling, then that's when you get bounced. You can't rely strictly on your offense to put up points in a few amount of possessions because in the span of 2, 3 games, that's going to come back to bite you. So looking at some of
Right.
these teams, Slee, you're looking for a team with, either glaring weakness at offense or defense and then a slow tempo. And so like Houston, incredibly slow tempo at the 349th slowest tempo. But that doesn't matter because they have the best defense. They're playing out in front a lot and they have a really good offense. You can say the same thing about a few of these teams in the top 10. When it starts to get glaring for me, I'm looking at a team like Baylor, who's got a great offense, but a bad defense and a really slow tempo, kind of just the exact scenario I just painted in the last point. But if these guys get down early, which they're very liable to, the 72nd best or worst defense, 72nd best defense, I'm sorry, and a very slow tempo, that's where I could see them getting in trouble within this first weekend or early in the Sweet 16, Elite Eight situation where they get down and then maybe their offense isn't hitting shots and they're not giving themselves many opportunities to score. So that's something that I could definitely circle on my bracket piece of paper and saying that's an upset waiting to happen. Same thing with Michigan State, who was a preseason, what, were they number 2 preseason?
I think
They
they
don't
were 5,
top
preseason
5,
5, but
top,
still.
and the offense isn't their strength, but they play incredibly slow. So they better hope their defense is getting stops that day or they're not going to win. Same kind of thing for San Diego State. Again, I mentioned them and I prefaced this in the first slide. This is a mid-major team with a weakness on offense that plays a very slow tempo. I would not put much faith in San Diego State. They could prove us wrong. They can, defy the odds and have a great offensive day, or they can get really lucky and play teams that, had an upset the round before. But I'm not seeing it in the stats that San Diego State has, built a team right now to repeat what they did last year and make a run, even to the Final Four, let alone the championship game.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I mean, and then you cuts off there at 20, but I mean, the stats don't lie. 20 through 29, a lot of teams are at risk for this.
Yeah.
Dayton especially, they play extremely slow. They do shoot the three ball pretty well, but their defense is 80th in the country.
Hmm.
I think they're gonna have a hard time matching up with some of these really skilled, just yeah, programs. I mean, when you have a lot of really good guards, I don't know how Dayton's gonna match up.
Yeah, I'll be intrigued to see what seeding they get. Their top 30, Ken Bomb. It's not quite there for a top 5 seed, but the selection committee makes some, I guess, on the surface, odd choices sometimes. I could see them sneaking into a top 5, 6 seed and being one of those guys that gets upset in the first round. Given
Right.
the
You never know.
mid-major status, top seed, slow tempo. So especially when you start to get a combination of these two or three of these rules that we just mentioned, that's really a lot of red alarm should be glaring in your head saying this team should not be going that far in my bracket. So I think these are some pretty good rules to stick by. It's not going to predict every upset and it might not be right every time, but I think it's certainly good rules. You think back to what upsets have happened in the last 3 years, a lot of them fall into the criteria of these 4 rules that we just mentioned. So something to really keep an eye out for. But that's it for me. Remember to subscribe to this channel. We're going to have a ton of great March Madness content coming up in terms of game picks, best bets, best stats through each and every round. It really does not get better than this channel. So subscribe and keep up with everything else that we've got going on for this exciting time in the college basketball tournament.